Are we excited to be here? Yes. Awesome. Welcome to our 2023 Digital Transformation event titled Innovating for the Future, the Digitalization and Process Automation Conference. Now, before we begin, I'd like you all to just take a look under your seats. Just go ahead, take a look. You will find that there's nothing there. Thank you. But seriously, I'm excited to have you all with us today at this very prestigious event being held by J.E.Bergasse Company Limited in collaboration with Xerox. Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here today. As the video highlighted just now, we have entered a new era where businesses are being forced to adapt, and the face of that adaptation is humans. Each of us seated in this room today has a critical role to play in this new digital era. We have a very exciting lineup for you. We'll have two keynote speakers, Dr. James Fletcher, followed by Mr. Martin Sharp. We'll then go into 3 rotational sessions conducted by Joel Mendoza from Xerox, Juan Dominguez from DocuShare, and Gary Fincher from Kofax. Now, there are some numbers at the back of your name tags. Just bear those in mind as they'll come in handy at the end of this presentation. Just to wake you up a bit, just give us a round of applause. Are you feeling excited? I love it, thank you. I can feel the excitement in this room, and I cannot wait for the transformative journey that we will go on today. During the sessions, you will be able to access a QR code that will be displayed on screen, and you will be able to input your questions. There will be a question and answer session where you will be able to get answers to those questions that you may have. Today is not just about knowledge sharing, it's about collaborating, it's about connecting. So I implore you to mingle with your fellow attendees. There are business leaders across hospitality, government, and finance, so seize the moment. Without further ado, I'd like to present Mr. Anthony Bergasse, Managing Director of J.E.Bergasse Company Limited, who will introduce our first keynote speaker, Dr. James Fletcher.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone. And again, let me reiterate what Siobhan said. Thank you ever so much for being with us here today. I am delighted to introduce Dr. James Fletcher as our keynote speaker for the Innovating for the Future, the Digitalization and Process Automation Conference. Dr. Fletcher was the Minister for Public Service, Information Broadcasting, Sustainable Development, Energy, Science and Technology in St. Lucia from 2011 to 2016. During his tenure, he led an aggressive modernization of the energy sector with a focus on the transition to renewable energy. He commissioned modern ICT centers in several underserved communities, started a program for free island-wide Wi-Fi, developed a 311 call center for the public service, initiated major water development projects, and established an employee assistance program to provide free confidential counseling to public officers. Dr. Fletcher played a leading role in the Caribbean's 1.5 to Stay Alive civil society campaign, and during the Paris COP21 negotiations, he was selected by the COP president to be part of the ministerial team that helped to achieve consensus on the elements of the Paris Agreement. He led the Caribbean's delegation to the COP21 negotiations. He was recognized by Global Optimism in Profiles of Paris as one of the people who played a key role in creating the historic Paris Agreement. In 2019, he was selected by the United Kingdom's Chevening Scholarship Programme as one of 35 global change makers. Dr. Fletcher has served in the government of St. Lucia as a permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, permanent secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, and as a cabinet secretary. He was also the director of Social and Sustainable Development of the OECS Commission. He currently manages his own consulting company, Solar Recon. I hope I got the pronunciation correct. He wrote and published the book Governing in a Small Caribbean Island State. He authored the chapter The Battle for Small Island Developing States in the Cambridge University Press publication Negotiating the Paris Agreement, The Inside Stories. And he edited and published Where is the Justice? An anthology of Caribbean youth perspectives on the climate crisis. He also wrote the Regional Strategic Action Plan for Governance and Building Climate Resilience in the Water Sector in the Caribbean. In 2020, he launched the Caribbean Climate Justice Project, which advocates for climate justice for the people most impacted by climate change. Dr. Fletcher holds a PhD degree in crop physiology from the University of Cambridge and a BSc with honours in biochemistry from the University of Ottawa. It is an honour to have Dr. Fletcher as our keynote speaker today to share his insights and expertise on the intersections of digitalization and process automation to sustainable development and climate action. Please join me in welcoming Dr. James Fletcher.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Good afternoon, everyone. And it's great to be here to speak on innovating for the future, digitalization and process automation. First of all, let's start at a very high level and then drill down. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Sustainable Development Goals. Maybe what you have not heard is that the Sustainable Development Goals, among the many things that they speak about, it's not just climate change or water, but they also speak about innovation. They also speak about information and communications technology. And in the preamble to the Sustainable Development Goals, it states very clearly that the spread of information and communication technology and global interconnectedness has great potential to accelerate human progress, to bridge the digital divide, and to develop knowledge societies. So that's there in the introduction to the Sustainable Development Goals. And there's one goal in particular, goal number 9, that I think speaks very clearly to this. And it speaks about building resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and fostering innovation, which is really what we're here to discuss today. But each of these goals establish targets that all of the governments are supposed to be aiming towards. So very often we hear about the Sustainable Development Goals and the 17 goals, but we don't hear about the targets that show you how much progress you're making towards achieving those goals. And one of the targets, for example, is target 9.5 on the goal line, which speaks about upgrading the technological capabilities of industrial sectors in all countries, in particular developing countries, by encouraging innovation. And there's another target that speaks about supporting domestic technology development, research and innovation in developing countries. Now, I mentioned these really to show that all of our countries have a template that they agreed to in 2015 for advancing development along a structured, logical pathway, and for which the international community has said, we'll provide you with funding if you do this. And there are targets that will give us some way of assessing how far you're going along. And I think the biggest grief for me is that our governments have not stuck to those goals, not stuck to that agenda that they all agreed to. Now, we're speaking here about digitalization. I just want to make a little bit of a comparison because I know there are no uninitiated in this room, but for the uninitiated, they kind of sometimes mix up digitization with digitalization. And digitization, and again, I know this is wasted on you, but digitization is when you take something on a piece of paper, analog, and you convert it into a digital form. That's digitization. That's pretty simple to do. Digitalization, on the other hand, is when you bring a digital process to bear on something. So it's how you leverage digital technologies to change the business model, to provide new revenue and value-added opportunities, or to transform opportunities, products, or services. But what really can you digitalize? Well, there are many things. You could digitalize your processes in a business. You could use technology to improve or change existing business processes. You could digitalize your business model. So for example, in the entertainment industry, when they moved from physical media to streaming services, that was an example of digitalizing a business model. You could digitalize a product or a service. Again, sticking with the entertainment industry, when you move from books to ebooks or digital music, that's digitalizing a product, digitalizing a service. You could digitalize your operations. You could use artificial intelligence to improve your logistics. You could digitalize your customer service experience. I'm sure many of you, and I have a slide on that a little bit later on, have interacted with chatbots. You go onto a website now and then suddenly something tells you, can I help you? How can I work with you? And then you think, okay, that's prompt. I'm speaking to somebody. No, you're not. You're speaking to a chatbot. You're speaking to artificial intelligence, and you could have a pretty long conversation with this thing before you realize that's not a human being you're speaking to. But you feel that you're getting real-time, personal feedback from the company. It makes you feel a little warmer towards that company until you get to the point where you realize, okay, you know what, you're not really telling me. You can digitalize data and analytics. How you use big data and how you process it so that you can make proper business decisions. You could digitalize your workforce and how your workforce interacts with each other. We saw that during COVID. So for example, the emergence of things like Microsoft Teams and Zoom, that is an example. Very often when you speak about digitalizing the workforce, people think only in terms of the negatives of it. But you could use digital technology to improve the interaction among your employees and help them to work, working at home, working remotely. That's digitalizing your workforce. And finally, digitalizing your supply chain so that you could address issues of logistics, etc. And then there's process automation, which is the other side of the coin, and that's how you use technology to automate repetitive tasks and streamline workflows. And there are very many advantages to that, which we'll come to in a while, such as reducing human errors. And what are some of the types of process automation? Well, robotic process automation. So you use, again, bots, chatbots to perform repetitive tasks that were previously done by humans. You could automate your workflow so that you routing tasks and approvals that previously you would need a human being to do. You could set certain parameters, and when these are achieved, then you get automatic approvals. You could really streamline your workflow by process automation. And finally, using artificial intelligence and machine learning to, for example, analyze large data sets, things that would take you a very long time. You could now use artificial intelligence to do that. So that's how, again, you could use process automation to improve your business case, your business model. What are some of the benefits? Well, actually, there are quite a few benefits from it. One of them is improving efficiency. You can use automation to reduce manual error, speed up processes, and free up human resources so that they can focus on more strategic and more important things. So some of the routine, manual, mundane activities that very often your staff get bogged down in, you could use automation, you could use digitalization to help you get these things done and then free up your staff for more creative, more strategic work. The other very important benefit is cost cutting, is helping you to reduce costs, because you really, again, using automation to eliminate repetitive tasks, optimize resource allocation. So when you improve efficiency, very often you are cutting costs. You're reducing on the costs that you would normally use. Improving customer satisfaction. Again, as things become more efficient, as people get more personalized service, more customized service, as you feel that the response of a company is really tailored towards you and what you want, then you feel a little better about it. Doesn't always work, but that's one of the benefits of process automation and digitalization. And also scalability and agility. It makes your company a lot more agile, it makes it more responsive, it cuts down on response time, cuts down on lag time. So again, there's an improvement in productivity and improvement in the way in which people perceive your company. However, it's not all roses. There are some threats that are associated with digitalization. And I think some of them you can probably pick out without me even telling you what they are. For example, cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a big issue as we put more and more services online, as your company depends more on, less on humans and more on machines that are always online, machines that not just you have access to, but because of the internet, everyone has access to. So you now are vulnerable to things like hacking, phishing, ransomware, which fortunately I don't think has reached our neck of the woods yet. I stand corrected, but is possible. It has reached our neck of the woods. Bad news, it has. And data breaches. So, and for you, I mean, there's significant financial loss, significant reputational damage that can be associated with that. There's also data privacy. Data privacy is a big thing. As you put more and more information online, you know, and you do it sometimes to make things easier. So you go and you shop on a site repetitively, and it tells you, store your credit card information there, or store some information there so that the next time you come, one click, and everything gets done. It's the proverbial one-stop shop that we've always been after, that holy grail. Well, the danger with that is that if all of your information is stored in one place, it's easier for somebody to access that information and use it for nefarious purposes. Use it to create a whole new identity and impersonate you and get access to things that ordinarily they ought not to and should not have access to. The other issue is that as you put more and more services online, as you digitalize your services, particularly in developing countries like ours, you are worsening the digital divide. There are people in our country, there are parts of our country that do not have access to the technology, don't have the capacity to access the technology, are not native, are not digital natives. So the more services that go online is the more difficult it is for some people to access those services. I returned to St. Lucia from a trip to Miami 3 weeks ago, and when I got to the American Airlines desk, I was asked whether I'd filled out my immigration form online. I said yes, I had. The person next to me had not. American Airlines would not allow them to board if they could not show evidence that they had filled out that form online. Now, not everybody has access to, not everybody is familiar enough with the technology that they can go online, upload the information and fill it out. And that's what technology is doing. It's a good thing for people like me because it makes the process when I enter St. Lucia, going through immigration and customs so much easier. I just show them this QR code on my phone and all the information is there. But think of the grandmother who's traveling, or the person who really doesn't have a clue how you could fill that form online and how you could upload the information. You're making it difficult. I actually found it quite interesting when I got to customs. I saw a whole set of sheets there, of the old form, and I asked, well, why do you have that? They said, well, one thing, the technology sometimes fails, the system crashes, so even if you have it, they can't do anything with it. So they have to then ask people to fill out the form. But there are also some destinations where people are coming from, like the UK, for example, and I think there was another airline that they mentioned to me that they don't use the online form. But American Airlines insists if you don't have it, they won't allow you to board. So again, that's creating a digital divide that sometimes can go against us. And that's why you have to ensure that in that transition to a digital economy, you don't leave anybody behind. Then you also have the issue of the displacement of workers. There's a good side of the technology and using the technology, but there's also a bad side that as people's skills don't adapt, the people who perform the mundane, repetitive tasks that the automation is getting rid of, these people then become redundant. And no industry is immune. This actually is, I remember doing a presentation at ECTA's anniversary. This is telecom service provider employment in the ECTA member states. And you can see what happened with liberalization, with competition, with a lot of services now becoming online, with the drop in voice traffic and most of the traffic being shunted through data. A lot of the service providers, and the service provider is the one bringing that technology to us, it is not immune from it. So all businesses really have to deal with the disruption that technology brings to them. And to show you, there are some jobs that were quite prevalent 15, 20 years ago. When was the last time you saw a switchboard operator? When was the last time you saw a video store employee? We don't have video stores anymore. But we used to go to a video store on a Friday and rent out movies and sit back and watch that. We don't have that anymore. When was the last time you went to Cadiz or somewhere like that to process your 35mm film? It's not there. These things have all disappeared in my lifetime, in your lifetime, at least in most of your lifetimes. There might be one or two young people there that can't remember Cadiz newspaper publishing staff. People don't read, most people don't read newspapers anymore. Not the paper edition, they read them online. But there are many jobs that are available now that were not available before. Many of the in-demand jobs, you didn't hear about them before. So things like app developer. 15, 20 years ago, there was no such thing as an app developer. A search engine optimization specialist, what was that? That is a big job now, it's a very important job now. If you want to ensure that your business gets high placements on all of these search engines, you employ somebody to do that. But 15, 20 years ago, that didn't exist. Big data analyst, what was that? Social media manager, you must have somebody to manage your social platforms now, otherwise you have no presence. That is as important as the old marketing specialist was many years ago. A drone operator, and even something that we probably don't pay attention to, an Uber or a Lyft driver. What makes Uber and Lyft possible? Technology. Technology is what has made it possible for you to now, every time I land in the US, I don't have to go and take a taxi and have the unfortunate experience that my wife had not too long ago in paying $50 for a taxi from Miami International to an airport, to the hotel where we were staying. I arrived the day before, I used Uber and I paid $23. And I still give the guy a $5 tip, and I was still less than half of what she paid. And I have an electronic copy of my receipt that I can use for tax purposes. But what has made that possible? Technology. So a lot of these jobs that did not exist before exist now. And there's some jobs that maybe in the next 10 to 15 years we won't see. Speech transcriber. In around 2000, I remember going to the US, going to New York, and going to Journal Musical, and buying a piece of software called Dragon Naturally Speaking. I don't know how many of you have used Dragon Naturally Speaking. Yes. Excellent piece of software. Back in the 2000s, I would speak to this thing and it would translate faithfully whatever I see. So I would say Deriso. And it would spell Deriso D-A-Y-R-A-Y-S-O. And I'd correct it and say no, it's D-S-R-U-I-S-S-E-A-U-X. And the next time I say Deriso, it would capture it faithfully. Now that's in the year 2000, that's 23 years later. Can you imagine how much that technology, I haven't used it, but can you imagine how much that technology has improved and how much these speech transcriber softwares have improved, software programs have improved since then? You don't need a translator anymore. You don't need to buy, what do you call it, Rosetta Stone. You can travel anywhere and your phone will do all the translating for you. So it's made it easier for you. A research assistant. People love ChatGPT. ChatGPT is scary, but you know what ChatGPT is really good for if you know your stuff? A really good research assistant. If you ask ChatGPT a question, it will mine the internet and it will give you a lot of the information that helps you organize your thoughts. And yes, you have to do some truth checking, etc. But it has eliminated the need for research assistants for many of us. The one thing that they say will be replaced by AI, which I don't think will happen in St. Lucia, is taxi and bus drivers. I can't really see a taxi and bus driver being replaced by AI going down that West Coast road anytime soon. Again, as I said, having interacted with a chatbot, chatbots are commonplace. The other threat from digitalization is a dependence and a reliance, an over-reliance on technology. So when the technology fails, like happens at the International Airport, when the system is not working and I appear and I'm very happy and I can show my QR code with my immigration and customs information and it fails, what do you then do? You then have a whole crunch of people rushing to fill forms that may not even be there. So that's just a simple manifestation of it. With big companies, the failure of systems is an even bigger issue and an even bigger threat. Fake news, big problem. There's a lot of information out there, but there's a lot of disinformation out there. So how do you sift through it and figure out what's good, what's not good? Again, that is a challenge that most companies will have to deal with. And finally, electronic waste. As we move more, we use technology a lot more, we are generating more waste. And for somebody who is environmentally conscious like I am, who's very concerned about sustainability issues, that is a big problem. So, takes us to digital transformation. And digital transformation is how you integrate digital technology into all areas of your business. So it's taking digitalization on several fronts and using it to change your business, to improve it. But the thing about digital transformation is that it represents a fundamental change in the culture of your organization. It allows you to continuously change the challenge the status quo. You heard about adapting. It allows you to adapt. You have to be continuously adapting when you embrace digital transformation. And this just shows you the evolution. So we started with digitalization, and digital transformation is the ultimate step. How do you bring all of these things together to reshape your business so that it's agile, it's adaptable, which is what I think this conference is all about. People intuitively assume that the amount of information that is available and the rate of progress is linear. It is not. If you look at how information is evolving, you'll see that change is now exponential. I mean, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, 3D printing, these are all things that have come about in the last 10 years. And when you look at the progress of knowledge accumulation, this is a scary graph. It shows you that in 1900, knowledge doubled every century. So every 100 years, the amount of human knowledge doubled every century. By the time we got to 1982, it was doubling every 12 to 13 months. Right now, knowledge is doubling every 11 to 12 hours. Wow. Every 11 to 12 hours. And every day, you assimilate the equivalent of 174 newspapers. I'm not talking about 174 small newspapers. Talking about 174 newspapers like the New York Times. That is the information overload that we're dealing with every day. Every minute on the internet, 3.67 million YouTube videos are being watched. 5.9 million Google searches are taking place. So I have to say there are three eras in the evolution of our civilization. There's before Christ, BC, AD in the year of our Lord, and AG after Google. Because Google has really changed things completely. Everyone is now an expert because of Google, and people become even more of an expert with ChatGPT, but that's another story. 66,000 photos and videos are being shared on Instagram. 44 million live streams are taking place on Facebook. That's every minute on the internet. That's the kind of information overload. But the other thing too is that information has a shorter half-life. So, you know, the information that was useful 10 years ago, information might have been useful for 12 months. Now it's useful for 6 months. And probably in the next few years, that information, some of the information that you accumulate might be useful for a month or two, which has serious implications for businesses, serious implications for you if you're a student, because imagine going to university and feeling really good because you've done a technical degree and you've come out with this, only to find out that by the time you finish in your third year, half of what you learned in your first year is obsolete. That's it. That is really the reality that you have to deal with. There have been 4 industrial revolutions. Right now we are in the process of the 4th industrial revolution, where we're looking at the fusion of human and artificial intelligence to create innovation that transforms and disrupts every aspect of life. So as I said earlier, technology is a massive disruptor. But the good thing about technology is that it is allowing us to reach new markets. As a business, you now have access to markets that you did not have before, every single one of you. You're not just confined to the 175,000 people that live in St. Lucia. Your market is the billions who live in China, who live in India. Once you can come up with a product that is appealing to them, you can market it to them. When I want something done, and I speak to let's say a graphic designer solution who tells me that it'll take me 3 months to get, or 3 weeks to get it done, I can go on Fiverr or on Upload and get it done within 24 or 48 hours by somebody living in Bangladesh or Serbia. And it will cost me maybe $100 US. I cannot get a graphic designer in solution to do anything for me for $100 US and produce it in 48 hours. Now, I would like to use a graphic designer from Solution, but the reality is if I want my business to be competitive and I want real-time responses, it's much easier for me to go on Upwork and Fiverr to get it done. What needs to happen, as we saw in the opening slide, is that you need to be able to get your services. So it's not just being from Bangladesh and Serbia accessing, but I'm accessing somebody living in Balka, somebody living in Asukanal, somebody living in really, and they're the ones, but I can't find any solutions in very few Caribbean people who are marketing their services on firewall. But the important takeaway is that the skills of our workforce have to change. We really don't have a workforce right now that is ready for this digital transformation we're speaking about. When you look at how our education system is configured, we are not producing the adults, the people in the labor force who could service that digital transformation. So while I applaud everything that J.E.Bergasse is doing with this, for this to be really successful, J.E.Bergasse and other companies need the assistance of government to transform our education system so that you could have the workers who could allow you, not just the people in this room who are a particular 99th percentile in this country, but the larger group of people you need to be able to access so that they can really be true players in this digital transformation. People need more advanced cognitive skills. Our education system must put a high premium on adaptability. You know, that has to be extremely important. And I like to reference this thing that Toffler says. Many people who heard me speak are probably tired of seeing this slide, but it is so important. Toffler says that the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Because you have to. If the information that you are exposed to is changing so rapidly, many of the things that you learned, you have to be able to unlearn it, and you must have the humility to be able to accept that, yeah, I was an expert when I left school, I'm not an expert anymore. Yeah. So I have to unlearn and relearn, and that is what, you know, and I think we said it earlier, the face of the adaptation is human. And Klaus Schwab, who is an economist and founder of the World Economic Forum, puts it very well, that important in this are our regulators, our policymakers. When the way in which our policymakers work now, they work in a very linear manner. You know, they have to take time to analyze a problem, put it through the public service, it has to go through all of its little linear processes, and by the time they come up with a response, the problem that they're trying to solve has evolved into something else. This fourth industrial revolution that we're dealing with right now requires decision-making that is much more nimble, much more agile, is much more interactive, much more inclusive, doesn't depend on a few people in an ivory tower having all the answers, but interacting with the people who are on the ground and have the experiences every single day, the businesses. That's what is needed. Unfortunately, that's not what is happening right now, not just in St. Lucia, but in any of our countries. So for digital transformation to take place, it's not just the companies can do everything that they can, but they need the support of the governments. The digital economy is equivalent to 12.5% of global GDP right now. It is growing 2.5 times faster than global GDP. So that shows you the opportunities that are available to us if we only get it right. Now, luckily in St. Lucia, I'm happy I see one or two people, luckily I didn't come into bash our service providers, which I never do. But at least our service providers in St. Lucia have recognized the need to provide us with a more stable internet infrastructure. And when you look at the bandwidth that's available in St. Lucia, it's much higher than it is in many of the other jurisdictions. But that's something that we have to pay attention to. Because, you see, I gripe and I moan when I drive along not anymore, but when I drive along the road to my home, that Rosalie Highway was horrible. Because you have to be dodging potholes. Now it's been repaired. But that highway is as important to me as the information highway. Because if I am my work requires me to be online, dealing with clients all over the world. If I have an internet service that's unreliable, I'm not getting enough bandwidth, that is as bad to me as navigating potholes on the Cash Rosalie Highway. And I think that is something that, again, our policymakers have to understand. So my final takeaway for you is that we need a constructive partnership. I love what the business sector is doing, but we need a constructive partnership between the business sector and government to unlock the full potential of digital transformation and innovation in a manner that ensures robust and dependable broadband, solid cybersecurity infrastructure, strong policy protections, regulations to prevent abuse and to protect everyone, and very importantly, programs to ensure that the benefits are accessible to everyone. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, and hello to everyone here. And I would like to start with apologizing for that bio. Every time I see that or hear it, it makes me feel old. And but also reminds me how blessed I am from God to have been to see so many different things and visit so many different places. So I really feel pleasured and privileged to be here with you today. But before we go into why I'm here, what we want to talk about and everything, we just watched the video, and I want to ask the audience a question, not so much the Xerox people in the room or those who are acquainted with what we're doing. What does anybody remember from the video that we just saw? Anybody want to put their hand up and make a point about what you actually remember? I'll choose someone if you don't step up. Come on now. Anybody? Hi. How are you? Yes, you. Don't mean to embarrass you. Do you remember anything about the video? Did you see anything that you remember? Xerox makes work work. Our new catch tag, we just launched that Tuesday. That's good to know. I'll tell marketing that we just launched it. It's been on the New York Stock Exchange. You're going to see a television commercial at the end of what it's doing. Yeah, we make work work. Anybody else? Don't make me pull the Xerox people, and it definitely should be saying something. Anybody else remember anything important about what you saw there? Hi. Don't look at her. How are you? What did you remember? Anything?
Seeing some old machines.
Seeing some old machines. That's interesting. We made, let's not forget, in the US they call making a photocopy making a Xerox. Yeah, it's in the dictionary. It's a word. Xeroxing. Watch films, you'll see Xeroxing. If you watch old films, you see Xerox around and everything. Yeah, we made the first printer. That's why we made that industry. Anybody else? Last one? Don't make me pick on somebody. He's pointing to you back, not me. Anything you remember?
Decades of innovation.
Decades of innovation, thank you, and I appreciate the three of you that I did put. But that's the main reason why we're here today. And if you think about it, we want people to know Xerox works where you work. And what that means is, and when I got introduced to the partner network many, many years ago, I was fortunate, as you saw on the screen, to be introduced to work in South Africa. And at the time, I had to have sign-off by our CEO at the time, was a young lady called Ursula Burns. And Ursula Burns, for those of you who don't know, was the first African-American woman to run a Fortune 500 company. First one. And she said to me, listen, you're going to go, I want you to go to South Africa, I want you to start working with our partners there, and I want you to start working with them and building up the business and getting them to do things the way we'd like to have them done. And I said, Ursula, I don't know anything about Africa. I feel very blessed to go there. And she said to me two important things. She said, Martin, we cannot go to these countries and sell as Xerox. We need to partner with local companies and help them begin to work in our environment and work with Xerox and how we do things. So the importance I'm trying to get across here is that we work here through J.E.Bergasse, and we work throughout the world through partners and different networks in what we do. We cannot go ourselves and actually have an importance, be able to force our impact of what we do in these countries. So we just want you to understand that Xerox works with local companies. We work with our partner networks in order to be relevant in where we're trying to be. So, and thank you again, Dr. Fletcher. Your presentation humbled me because of all the historic elements and things that we saw. It reminded us of how much information and how things have changed so dramatically over the past few years, and how we need to try to stay in the curve or ahead of the curve or be aware of the curve in order to be able to look at digitization or digitalization and process automation around this conference here and what we're doing. So what I wanted to talk about was, and a lot of the information that I bring to you today will be referenced not from a Xerox perspective, but from third-party analysts, in this particular case, IDC, International Data Corporation, to look at 80% of the data that enterprises or companies like yourselves create is unstructured, untagged, or unorganized. And it's very easy for us to talk about that type of information. What do we actually mean when we say unstructured or untagged and unorganized? And as my title tells me, I'm kind of leading into the learning and development role I'm working with now. So I apologize if I drift into that type of format. But anybody want to help me understand what your perspective of unstructured data is? Any volunteers? I tell you, I got a tough audience today. So any volunteers want what unstructured means? And I'll ask the Xerox team to jump in at this thing, because you should know this because we've been working on it. Unstructured data? Anybody? Sorry? heard something there. No? Okay. So when we talk about unstructured data, we're really looking at data that has no relevance, no awareness of what it is. It's sitting in different locations. There's no way of capturing it. There's no way of being able to look at it from any type of perspective that we need to be able to find. When we talk about untagged, now we're talking about being able to recognize it from a local perspective. So it might be from the company name, or the person's name, or the date, or an invoice number, or something like that. And then when we go into unorganized, we have it in a lot of different places. So when we look at and talk about data, and being to align that with digital transformation, we begin to look at it from these type of perspectives and making it relevant and aware for people to actually to see. So when we look at the explosion, or what's happening in the world currently, when we talk about how things are happening and working within the world as we see it, we begin to talk about the challenges that come to businesses and what they're working with. And as you can see, we look at the fact, and I was talking to some of you earlier around how we talk about how our employees need to have access to data and being able to recognize and see things that they're be able to, the challenges around accessing the data that they need to have. So when we think about the impact that the pandemic had, the fact that we started working in the offices and having access to information and being able to see it, it became very apparent from the pandemic that we needed to have access to this data and around it. And the statistic here is talking about that 90% of employees look at their job being more difficult to being able to accessing the data that they need to do it. Now, if we've learned nothing about what's going on in the world now and what's happened, we do know that we're going to constantly have ongoing challenges and issues and things that we need to deal with on a regular basis. So that alone begins to make sense that we need to have the ability to have our employees be able to access and get data that's important for them to do their jobs. The next statistic we talk about around challenges is the fact that the 43% of employees feel productive with a remote work environment. Now, I'm very fortunate. I live in Wales in the UK, and I work from home the majority of the time. And prior to the pandemic, I used to work in the office in London. I used to spend, quite a lot of time on the road, going back and forth to London to the office and so on and so forth. And we found that the hybrid office, when the pandemic came, everybody started working from home. And then afterwards, we had to begin that split. What we're actually seeing, depending on the country or where you're at, is that now people are going back to the office. And as I spoke to some of you earlier today, however, there's that balance that we're trying to find between home, work, life, and balance, between people working in the office and working from home. What Xerox found out very quickly is that, wow, my employees are actually more productive when they work from home. So they really encourage this hybrid office where we work from, because they realize that we tend to work earlier in the morning and later at night. But what we're finding is that a lot of organizations are investing time and technology and knowledge into having that hybrid office. Now, the benefit they get is how much harder people can work potentially, but the other benefit they get is that home, work, life, and balance. Because we found that the pandemic, just how important it is to value life and value our families and value the things that we get from that work, home, life, work, and balance. So a lot of companies are looking at this remote work model and bearing in and putting credence into that. Last but not least is that the data and the security and the compliance around storing information. Now, it begins to get really scary when we look at the amount of data being cybersecurity, data being hacked, and all the things that are happening in the world around it. However, there's also compliance and regulations which fall into place that most companies, or a lot of companies, have to have the ability to comply with. So it's important that when we talk about digital transformation and being able to access data and use data on a regular basis or storage basis, we have to have security aligned with it. You have to be comfortable that the information that you're putting in the cloud, the information that you're making available for people, is secure around it. And that's why you see in the UK, the GDPR regulations and HIPAA in the US and different things that are available from a security perspective. But the important thing to remember is that this information has to be secure and has to be available in a secure process depending on when you use it or access it or go forward with it. So these are all the things that we're finding around the explosion of having information available, the explosion of people working from home and the ability to manage the security element of keeping that data safe as possible for yourselves and your customers and people that you work with. So Xerox's philosophy, as you saw from the video, is that information, how we work, how we deliver, and how we deliver information and work in the world is based around what we saw with Dr. Fletcher mentioned around digital transformation. And you'll see various different definitions of it, but you'll see the common synergy from what we saw earlier, what we have here. And we've broken it down into looking at 4 potential different ways. And you heard the basic element of looking at digitization of taking paper and making it available electronically. That's the first thing of getting information together. Getting it together from a paper perspective and making it available to people in the cloud in different ways of doing it. And it has to be a secure environment. We then look at the use of using digital technologies, because now, once you have the information available, you have to be able to automate it to make it more flexible and have the ability to look at that information and use it and work with it from a secure perspective and automate the processes around it. It's no good in just having it available without automating the processes to make it quicker and available and linked to the business that you're trying to drive. Then you start looking at going into the full digital transformation, where we're working with the integration of these processes, enterprise-wide automation, bringing elements of how you work together with it, and being able to modernize the current processes, work with a trusted partner advisor to make that information as flexible and as informative as possible that you've got. The last thing we look at is the innovation element of it, and once again, you look at the historic element of J.E.Bergasse and Xerox historically looking at the innovation being brought to the table and how technology and everything is moving so fast, innovation becomes important. So Xerox believes, along with our partner network, that bringing this information together and allowing people to see it from a digitally transformative perspective gives you the flexibility and the usage to have a stronger, more effective process in your work environment. So when we talked about how we present Xerox to our customers, we look at a very interesting way of talking about it. We talk about it from a why change, why do people change, why do we need to look at change management, why now, and then why Xerox, or why the partner you would work with. And what we found is that another statistic that IDC predicts that 80% of enterprises or businesses will overhaul their relationships and execute digital strategies for deployment across their IT operations. Now, that's a pretty bold statement when you look at that large of a number in that shorter period of time for next year. And you might begin to think about, well, why would they say that? Why is that happening? And what we found that the one constant thing we're finding throughout the world is disruption. It's happening, it will happen again, and we will always have to be able to manage and deal with disruption and how we manage with it. And the point of how we deal with that is through resiliency. The more resilient you are, you'll be able to react more effectively to what's happening with the disruption in the world. And that is by having a strong digital strategy in place. That only happens, as we saw earlier, with having the partnership between government and the local businesses in order to make them work together more effectively. Disruption is going to happen. The key to that is resiliency. If you look at all of the type of reports and information that we see happening in the world today, those are the 2 consistent words that you will see, and you've seen them already today. So that's why we need to change. Something's going to happen again, and we need to be able to respond to it as quick as possible and being effective to continue working as we do. And just a couple of points here I want to talk about on why we need to do it now. Why do we need to look at why work changes? And if we look at the cybercrime activity affecting businesses increasing by 600%, I can't even begin to see that number, how it grows so quick and so fast, but if you look at the amount of crime and the impact that cybercrime has on business. And I was recently attending a presentation where the gentleman asked the group, does anyone know how much it costs when your business gets hacked? Anybody want to take a stab at what it costs? No one knows. All you can do is look at the impact that's had on organizations who have been hacked. Some of them are gone, and some of them struggle to recover from that cybercrime happening to them. So, once again, you have to look at how that's going to mitigate that type of impact on your business and have a partner that's going to help work with it. Climate change. We talk about the impact of using paper and trees and so on and so forth. Let's talk about power. I've recently talked to a good friend of mine who works in South Africa. South Africa going through a system called load power sharing. Anyone ever heard of this before? So in South Africa, you could be in a situation we're working right now, the lights go off. It's your turn not to have power. So a lot of companies want to know exactly how much power they're using on their IT infrastructure to mitigate the impact of what's happening in their environment around them. And certainly, last but not least, we talked about distributed workforce and how people are working now and the stress levels that they have. So all of these things can be affected and managed by digital transformation and having the right partner there to support you to do it. And that's really why we're here today, to look at how we can help you look at digital transformation within your organization and having J.E.Bergasse and Xerox as your trusted partner advisor to be able to manage and mitigate these challenges that we talked about today. So we have these 3 sessions. We're going to talk about workflow automation and how you can make that journey easier and more effective. Listen, it's very easy for companies to come and say to you, look, you need to buy this, you need to have this, buy this for me, put this process in place for me, and I'm going to make it all get better for you. That does not work. First of all, no one has the money to buy everything that they need to be able to have around it. And more importantly, you need to have a trusted advisor to put a process in place based on what you have, where you're trying to get to, and to go on that journey with you. And that's where we step in to work with you to have that journey be more effective. The second one is around the digital transformation workflow. How are we going to get that information available and start putting you on the path? Because a lot of you have started the path already. You might be in the middle of it, you might have not started, but let's identify where you're at, and we'll work with you to see if we can provide some benefits and more additional ways of value around it. And also looking at rethinking how your business works with a smarter workflow experience. You're going to hear the team talk about different things around workflow, talking about the access of information, how that information becomes more viable and beneficial to you by making it available. So this is why we feel, or why we know, that working with us and J.E.Bergasse, you're going to be able to look at this digital transformation journey.